Hi, this is your host, Laura Powers, and I'm so pleased to have Dr. Obed Magny on the show. And we're here to talk about, tough decisions, leadership, and how to solve and tackle difficult problems. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So we connected through actually a television boot camp that I was on, and you were a speaker, and I just loved your energy and what you had to say. And I think you're dealing with some things that are really challenging in society right now. And it is time now where we have to face some things that are uncomfortable and difficult, and in some cases where there's not what we perceive at least to be an easy solution. So thank you for talking and being a guest with us today. I'd love if you could share a little bit about your story so that people have some context for you and what you have to say.
Yeah. So I was born in Miami, Florida, and raised in Boston, Massachusetts. Shout out to my Red Sox fans out there. Then I moved out here to Sacramento, California, because me being a tropical brother, I don't like cold weather. So I had to come out here where it's nice and warm. So that's kind of, where I'm at right now. I have a doctorate degree in organizational leadership. And let me just back up real quick. So after I got my undergrad at UMass Boston, I swore that I would never go back to school because school was not my thing. And then I come out here to California, and then I don't know what hit me. The bug hit me. And I was like, you know what? Let me continue my education. Why not? So got my master's and I got my doctorate while I was out here, here in Sacramento. I'm a police officer. I've been a police officer for 16 and a half years. And I'd mentioned to you before, it feels like 16 and a half minutes because that time just flew by and I don't even know where it went. So there is some truth when talk to some law enforcement officials, when they tell you that it goes by really, really fast, it does. So I've been fortunate to work in different units. I was a policy guy in our department for a couple of years. I was a school resource officer. Work patrol. So, I've been exposed to a lot of things. And I was even on our union board for 3 years. So I got to see the labor side of policing as well as the administrative side. So I'm a fellow with the National Police Foundation. I'm a co-founder of the American Society of Evidence-Based Policing. I'm a National Institute of Justice Leeds Scholar alumni, and I currently own and run my own business called Magny Leadership, where we provide emotional intelligence training to law enforcement agencies so that they can keep their officers and their communities safe. Sidebar, I'm a big fan of college football. Go Miami.
That's so fun. So my alma mater is University of Colorado, and we're the Buffs. And I used to work actually with the football program, and we got to travel sometimes with the team and with our mascot, which is Ralphie, which is a live buffalo, which was pretty amazing. So I had some fun with football. But I'm so glad you brought up emotional empathy and learning how to do that. I think this is so huge. I feel like if everyone could increase their skills in this area, we would have such a better, kinder, gentler world with less conflict. What got you to focus on that in particular?
I remember this like it was 5 minutes ago. So as a second year doctoral student, I came across the topic of emotional intelligence. And it was like the big bright light aha moment. I was like, oh, that's it. That's what we're missing in policing. This is why, people are always looking at police officers and saying that, they don't understand them and they have some choice words, which I obviously won't use here. But
Right.
there's always the narrative of, cops are a-holes or, they're not very understanding and so on and so forth. And when I came across emotional intelligence, now mind you, I kind of knew what it was. I didn't know that there was a name for it. So I'm all about relationships. That's just me. And even prior to us meeting, you saw how animated I am and how I get down. That's just me naturally. And even in my career, over the course of my career, people, that I've arrested or, I've done, put in the back of my patrol car and all that kind of stuff. When I'm off duty, these same people, when I see them, sometimes they see me before I see them. And they're like, hey, Officer Magny. I'm like, hey, what's up, man? And we just dapping each other up. And it's like a big, love fest. Hey, man, I'm doing good. I'm married. I got kids now and so on and so forth. And not just me, but other officers who have the same mindset, who are very, very relationship oriented and understanding people and empathetic. We always have those same stories that we share with each other. So growing up, that's always happened to me. Even during my college careers and even during my other jobs that I had, prior to being a police officer, I've always had those relationships and I've always had those episodes. And I was like, I don't know if it's a gift from God. I don't know what it is, but I like people. I like talking to people. I like meeting people where they're at. And empathy and understanding them is a big thing for me. So in policing, I haven't changed. It's always been my bread and butter, so to speak. So as a second year doctoral student, I didn't know that there was a name for it called emotional intelligence. So when I got familiar with it, it was that's what it's called. And so from there, I've just dived into it. And, my dissertation topic was on job satisfaction in police officers. And this is during the 2008 Great Recession. So it was like, why is it that officers still want to come to work every day when we had pension reform and, there was tons of cuts going to, public safety and so on and so forth. So that's kind of like where I got started. And then that kind of led to, me being a fellow with the Police Foundation and, being involved with evidence-based policing, because the research, like you mentioned, on emotional intelligence is overwhelming. You have higher recruit retention rates, you handle stress better, you have more resiliency. When you're understanding and recognizing people's emotions as well as your own, there tends to be less conflict. You understand what's going on, even though you hear some people being angry with you. It's not so much what's being said. It's not so much what they're saying, it's what's being said. So understanding that, those nonverbal cues and, things like that.
Yeah, I feel like this is a huge thing, and we're so used to thinking of intelligence being just this kind of intellectual and analytical aspect, and that is, of course, very important. But yeah, I've seen studies myself as well that if you are emotionally intelligent, you will be so much more successful, and it actually serves you really well to focus on that. And some people, of course, are naturally that way, but there's a lot of people that aren't. And I also think some of this is taught, like depending on whether these things were addressed in your family or not, you pick up on that. And so there's definitely an element of that which is taught. And it sounds like that's what you're focusing on. So yeah, how do you go about teaching this when someone, for most people, this is a pretty foreign topic?
Well, that's a great question. So a couple things. I'm going to try not to bring 10 topics in at one time. I could talk about this for like the next 55 hours. I love it. So if you think about IQ, right? So you hear people making jokes, oh, your IQ's like, 2 or something like that, or this kind of, that kind of language. IQ is a threshold competency, right? So by the time you're in your teenage years, your IQ doesn't get any higher. It doesn't get any lower. It just is what it is. And you can't teach somebody to have a high IQ. Now with emotional intelligence, it's flexible and it can be taught. So even if you have the lowest level of emotional intelligence across all 4 quadrants, so it starts with self-awareness, which moves on to self-regulation, which goes into social awareness, and then relationship management. If you're low in any or all 4, you can increase that with training and with education. And like anything else, you got to work on it every single day. Like when you go to the gym, if you're running or if you're lifting weights, you do it over the course of time, you get better at it. And which leads to being more empathetic and, you're more motivated to, go to work every day and so on and so forth. So that's one. 1A of that is in policing, there is no, I'll put it like this. So you hear the discussion of de-escalation training, for example, right?
Right.
That's one of the things we hear about reforms, like, hey, we need more de-escalation training in policing, et cetera, et cetera. The research right now, and I'm giving you the best numbers that are available out there right now. At best, you might find a police organization that might teach 4 hours worth over the course of a 6-month academy, and that's it.
It's like a drop of water in a bucket or something.
It's not even a drop. It's not even a sprinkle.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, in every industry, if you think about your Fortune 500 companies, emotional intelligence training is mandatory because they understand that their bottom line is profitability. And I'm not saying that policing, we're all about profits because that's not what it is. But their model is if our customers are happy, we're going to be happy because we'll make more money. We have higher recruiting retention rates. You're going to be a better employee, a better manager because you understand people. There's multiple tiers of success associated with it. So if 99% of a police officer's interaction with the public is usually when they're having a bad day, it would make sense that we would have some kind of training to understand. And I can give you a couple of anecdotal stories where, I've had people just yelling and screaming or whatever it is. And then after talking to them, all they want to do is vent. They just want somebody to listen to them. You know what I'm saying? So if somebody's just angry about a situation and I'm there, if you recognize that, you know what, they're angry and they need to vent for 15 minutes. So what I will do is I will sit there and I will let you undress me in any way, shape, or form. And once you get out of your system, we can move forward, you know, in solving whatever issue that we have in front of us. So that's very, very important. And we do need more of this in policing, which is why, you know, this is my passion, you know, teaching the subject.
Yeah, I mean, well, I would say I think we need this in our whole society. I mean, certainly in policing, but I feel like what we're seeing right now, and you see this a lot on social media, and then obviously in a lot of protests and things that are happening right now, you know, these opposing sides where people are not listening to each other, they're letting rage take over. And the one that really popped out for me of the four ones that you mentioned is that self-regulation piece. I feel like people don't know how to take something in and then not just be extremely reactive. Like we're in a very reactive time. And, you know, if you have two reactive people, you know, connecting with each other, that what does that create? An explosion. And that's basically what we have in terms of society right now, is this very explosive dynamic. So can you talk a little bit about self-regulation in particular and how you teach people to handle that better?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, you can't lead other people unless you know who you are first and foremost. So I'm sure you've been on an airplane, and what do they tell you? As soon as those masks come down, in the event that it's needed, you got to take care of yourself first before you take care of the person next to you. So the first step is being self-aware of your own emotions as they happen to you. Now, I can make the joke, okay, me being a Miami Hurricanes fan, you know, I'm not a fan of the Florida State Seminoles because they're the arch nemesis of the Kings. So, and of course I say this jokingly, but we were on the same wavelength. I know that if the Miami Hurricanes lose to Florida State, I'm going to be upset. I'm going to scream, I'm going to start throwing things around and so on and so forth. I've got to regulate that if I'm in public or if I'm around some people who may not be into college football, right? So bring this to policing, or in the situation where we have in this nation right now where people are just on edge and everybody's stressed out. If you recognize, if you're proactive in recognizing, hey, I know I'm getting stressed out, what are those things? What are those avenues to regulate those emotions? So some people like to count to 10. Some people, if they can, they'll step away and they'll meditate for 2 minutes or for 1 minute. That's another avenue. Sometimes it's taking a deep breath and gathering your thoughts. So there's more than one way, depending on the individuals, depending on where you're at, where you can gather your emotions or gather your thoughts, understand what it is that's in front of you. And when you do that proactively and on a regular basis, when you practice that all the time, then you're better equipped to regulate your emotions as they happen to you. So when I see an event, or if I'm in a situation where, you know, like I mentioned before, somebody's angry and they're yelling at me or looking past me, this, that, and the third, I understand that if I match their energy, nothing good's going to come from it. But if I recognize that, hey, okay, this is kind of getting under my skin. Okay, but what's going on here? Okay, this person's upset about something. Maybe, you know, he had a bad day or she had a bad breakup or whatever that is. Okay, just look at this situation for what it is. When I'm thinking like that, you almost always have an upper hand on regulating your emotions as it happens to you. So.
Yeah, it's amazing how just pausing for a minute is so huge. And I'm glad you brought up the idea of breath, because I feel like a lot of people unconsciously just hold their breath, and that creates a stress response in the body. And so if you just bring in that oxygen, this thing that is so abundant for us all the time that we just always have at our disposal, that can just bring down those stress hormones and just make us more calm. And then we're better able to handle whatever it is that's coming at us, so that we're not reacting from this stressed out, you know, mental place of anxiety.
Yeah, and there's a great book by Viktor Frankl, for those who may not be familiar with it, Man's Search for Meaning. One of the best books, top 5 books, easily. I'm telling you right now, it will change your life. And I'm not going to give you the answers to the test, but, you know, the message in the book is life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. So if there's a book recommendation from this, obviously I'd recommend, you know, Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. He's obviously one of the seminal authors of, the subject, but that book by Viktor Frankl, a lot of what you're talking about is, with everything going on, you have to take it for what it is. You have to understand it for what it is. And when you proactively do that, you are much, much better prepared on that self-regulation in responding to those events.
Great. I love those tips. Definitely, I'll check out those books because I haven't read them, but I'm sure that there's a lot of wisdom there. I just think, yes, absolutely, that so much of your experience is your perception and your reaction. And this is why you have people that have gone through, incredibly devastating, traumatizing experiences, and then they rise up and some don't. So much of it is you look at someone like Oprah. I mean, she had some tough beginnings, but she was able to move past that and, really become a teacher. And, she's doing pretty well, in terms of materially and everything and society. So is this something, I'm curious, that you struggled with on your own, or is more just that you saw a need?
I knew the need was there. I just didn't know what the name of it was or what the name of it was called. Let me give you an example. Let me give you
Sure.
all right. So in my earlier career, I feel like an OG now. I'm over like in my earlier career, myself and a couple officers responded to a burglary in progress. And we ended up, finding the burglar who just happened to live around the corner from the houses he was burglarizing. So, we take him to custody, put him back to a patrol car, no use of force, no big deal. So during the records check, now I'm not the lead officer at the scene. I'm just there helping out. He's on probation, so we drive around the corner to do a probation search at his house. Now, me being the good friend, good officer, I'm sitting in my car, I'm just helping out with some paperwork because there's too much paperwork in policing. So I'm just sitting in my car and I'm just doing this, and then I hear some yelling. I'm just like, who's yelling and screaming? And so there's an argument going on, and it's with one of the officers on scene with the kid's mother. So the guy I don't know if he was in the backseat of my car or another car, I can't remember. But the officer's like, hey, we're gonna go upstairs and do a probation search of, this guy's room. And she's like, no, you ain't. And so it becomes a stalemate where the two of them are like, he's like, we're gonna do this. And she's like, you're gonna do this over my dead body. And I'm watching this and I'm like, OMG. This is gonna get physical and we're gonna have problems. And you know what? Let me step in and see what I can do. So I get out of the car, and I got a great relationship with this officer. So it wasn't like he would have took it personal if I stepped in or anything like that. I got in my car, I walk over there, and I'm like, hey man, you don't mind? Let me just talk to him real quick. You know what I'm saying? She's like, yeah, I'm not. You ain't coming to my house, this and that. I was like, hey man, let me talk to him. He's like, please, by all means, do you? So I walk with the mom, and I don't know, we're like maybe 40 yards away. And and I'm not exaggerating, for about maybe 20, 25 minutes, she just unloads on me, okay? And I recognized right away that this woman was suffering from some trauma. So you got the trauma of her son is in the back of a patrol car.
Right.
B, the trauma of all of these patrol cars are here for her residence early in the morning, and it's embarrassing. And I'm sure there were some other, mitigating factors. She's probably experienced this before in the past. And so we're talking about self-awareness and self-regulation. When I recognized that her anger was not specifically towards me or to the officer, I just gave her the floor. And after that, we had a little discussion, and we talked about, I was like, hey, listen, we have to do this, whatever. If you want, I'll go up there and do it. He could just stay out here. So by the time we were done talking, she was totally okay with the two of us going up there. And of course, the other officer chose not to. But so I went up there, and there was nothing in the room because we got to check to see if there's any other tools or any other burglarized items in the room. But it turned out okay. So what happened? No use of force. Nobody got hurt. Mom was understood and acknowledged. Her feelings were validated. She was validated. And if you think about it, every situation, or at least 99.9 infinity, you would hope would have that same ending, right? Yeah. If she was upset about something, she can go through the civil process, whether filing a complaint, et cetera, et cetera. But the officer didn't get hurt. She didn't get hurt. It never got to that point. That to me is always the ideal situation where everybody walks away, nobody's physically harmed. And then, let the chips fall where they may be as far as, resolving that situation. So that to me was, and again, this was, and mind you, after the incident, he came up to me and was like, "Hey, bro, thank you for stepping in, because it was gonna go sideways if that didn't happen."
Yeah.
So, you think about, and I'm not patting myself on the back or anything, but what if I wasn't there? And how many situations do we know of where somebody with that high degree of emotional intelligence is not there to step in or say something or anything like that? So, again, this was something that I was very familiar with, because I've seen it on both sides, the absence of it and when it's being applied. We just need more of this training. It shouldn't come to, you're lucky enough to come across this officer or you're lucky enough to come across that officer. You would hope, the expectation is, at least with the public, is that every officer, has that level of, EQ, or EQ is being a short version of emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I feel like so many of the problems in our society right now come from this oppositional approach, meaning like there are these two opposing sides and we have to be against each other and fight against each other. I was at a talk one time and it was such a profound experience. The speaker said, okay, just find someone to partner with and you're basically going to arm wrestle with each other. And each person, every time they go down, like basically they win the arm wrestle, they get $1, So that's the premise. And so she said, and go. And you could see that most people were like fighting each other. And then the smart people were like, okay, you go down, I go down, you go down, I go down. Like, that, we're approaching this from that, it has to be like we're on opposite sides and we're fighting each other. But actually, if we can coordinate and work with each other, we can both win. Like, she didn't say you lose money if you lose the arm wrestle. She only said you get money if you win. And so, this is what's happening in our whole society, is this idea. I feel like it comes from, in a way, from a lack mentality of like, there has to be only one winner instead of like, we can all win. And when you change that mindset from like, it's win-lose to potentially win-win, then, it's a game changer.
Absolutely. It's not a competition. There is no one side wins and the other side loses. It's everybody wins when everybody's working together towards a common goal. Everybody wants their communities to be safe. And at some point, with anything in life, some things get stale. Training has to improve. Policies and training have to catch up to the 21st century. All of these things. And you have to constantly, evolve with the changing times. And, that's why I'm a big proponent of, evidence-based policing. If you think about research, even in medicine, right? I mean, the pharmaceutical industry, nothing gets done without some form of research and development phase. So if we're falling short somewhere, it's like, okay, let's take a look at this issue holistically. What is the most effective way that we can approach and solve the problem without causing any harm to the community? Because if you already know, in the 80s and 90s with the crack cocaine epidemic, that's what we did. We took a zero tolerance, iron fist, everybody goes to jail. And then what happened? Tons of Black families just got, thrown in jail and broken up, and the generational effects that happened afterwards. I mean, did we really win that war on drugs? I mean, at the expense of destroying families? I don't know that that's the most effective way of doing it. Now you're seeing a different approach now with the opioid crisis. That's now we're treating that as a public health issue as opposed to a public safety issue. So, again, it's just one of those checks and balances where, you got to have those measurements in place and constantly evaluating whether or not what you're doing is working. And if it's not working, why isn't it working, and what you can do to make it better. And it's very, very important that you have all the voices, all the stakeholders involved in solving those issues. And it just can't be one side doing everything for everybody else.
So I think you're in a fairly unique position with what you're teaching, but do you find it difficult in terms of the community? Right now we're very much in, again, this one side or the other, your Black Lives Matter or your Blue Lives Matter or your whatever, fill in the blank, you're a Trump supporter or you're a Biden, there's no room for any gray area or for being both or whatever, or being neither. So how do you handle that in your situation?
Again, it's funny you bring this up. Back in August, two of my colleagues and I, who are police officers, walked from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery, Alabama, to commemorate the 1965 Civil Rights Act. So, Jimmy Lee Jackson was a deacon, 26 years old, and he was killed during a peaceful protest. And that's what sparked the whole Selma to Montgomery march. And for those who don't know, there was actually 3 attempts before that actually took place. And obviously, the march took place, and then Lyndon Johnson signed some bills for civil rights to become here, law of the land. And my 2 partners and let me give them a shout out, Sean Barnes and Tarek McGuire. The 3 of us as Black law enforcement leaders said, because we're watching the landscape and we're seeing people saying, yeah, if your blue lives matter, then Black lives don't. Or if you say that Black lives matter, then blue lives don't. And it's just like, this is not productive. You can say that Black lives matter, and you can say that blue lives matter too, because there are a ton of officers out there who do great work in the community. And sometimes that gets overshadowed by some of the negative stuff that we see in the news.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So for us, it's not we're on one side and not the other. You can do both at the same time. You can be pro-community and you can be pro-police at the same time. This whole idea that, you're going to pit one group against the other, we're not of that mindset. We're all about, hey, how can we, moving forward, bring some healing in this process? Because we need to heal moving forward, because what we got going on right now is not going to be sustainable. I mean, that's just a fact. So it's not easy. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, it's a walk in the park. It's just, no big deal. But at some point, there's got to be some courage. And I can tell you right now, Sean, Tarek, and myself, we did something momentous, and there is going to be a documentary coming out soon. Look out for it. They're called The 54th Mile. And, a lot of us have to lead by example and not just talk the talk. You got to walk the walk. So this idea that, like you said, that you have to be on one side or the other side, I don't subscribe to that. I know that when we all work together moving forward, things get done. But pitting each other or saying they're the others or F those guys or what, that's not going to work. Or I don't want to be a part of that conversation.
Well, I mean, what that leads to is war and major conflict. And, it's a long and painful process, and it doesn't usually turn out well, so I think anything that we each individually can do is important and helps kind of deflect this. And also, so much of this is illusory, like this us versus them. It's some kind of label that we've created in our mind, but we're all people. And the other thing is we all have had different backgrounds, which explains, why our perspective is different. But if we could just get back to that, we're all people. And if we just treat each other as we would want to be treated and stop this kind of aggressive, contradictory approach with each other, then that's huge. And I see this a lot on social media with people just bashing each other, not listening. And I really loved what you had to say about so often people just want to be heard. That's all that it really is. And we're not heard a lot in our society, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what happens when somebody's ignored in any relationship or undermined and ignored at the same time in any relationship? I don't know of any healthy relationship where that is the foundation. I'm not familiar. If you know of one, please let me know, because I don't know any that works that way. So any relationship, and I'm not talking just about, husband, wife, or spouse, whether it's a community thing, whether it's me and my Yankee friends, Yankee baseball team friends, it's based and rooted on authenticity, love, and respect. You could be different. You can have a different ideology from me. And man, I will be the first one to run through a brick wall for you. And I know you do the same one for me. That's what relationships should be grounded in: trust, love, and respect.
I love that. So I'm curious, do you consider yourself a spiritual person?
I can be.
You seem like it, but I'm just always curious. So I very much believe in angels, and Archangel Michael is the angel for law enforcement and protection and justice. So anyway, I just was curious if you've ever connected with that or even heard that before.
Nobody's ever said that to me specifically, so
I will say I've been asking him for help a lot with the whole situation. So, I believe that we should work with each other, call on our, our human team, and then call on our spiritual team, like call all the help,
Yeah,
do everything that we can.
yeah. But if I could say one thing,
Sure.
is don't wait. And this is not, specific for you. I'm just saying for anybody
Sure.
who's watching or listening to this, don't wait for somebody to do something.
Completely.
Step out there and do something yourself. Be a part of the solution. Because at this point right now, I mean, we're in late October, 2020. The standing on the sidelines and staying silent, that's not working anymore. You've got to pick pick a side. You're going to be on the side of a solution, or you're going to be a part of the problem. There is no, hey, if I stay over here, I'm safe, nothing's going to happen, and nobody's going to see me. Like that. At this point, silence is almost seen as complicity.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And we're not saying you have to walk 54 miles like, myself, Sean, and Tarek did, but you can, whether it's volunteering or, reading to some kids in a school, to second graders or something, but be a part of the solution. Don't wait for somebody to do something for you, or, because oftentimes, I mean, how many times do we hear about these great leaders that we have that pretty much came out of nowhere because they took it upon themselves to, do something. And, like you were saying, maybe it's God or Archangel Michael, just picking people who are, ready to, be put out there. So I don't wait, be a part of the solution, do something.
I completely agree. Doing things to help, that we can in terms of society and the world. And then also what you already talked about, that of our own peace, that self-regulation, that learning about emotional empathy. Like, I think the world changes as we change. I really do believe that. So I think it's twofold. And if you're listening to this and you aren't aware of some of the historical things that have happened in our society with police and with Black people, for example, in the country, I really recommend doing some research. They're fictional shows, but I think they show some things in terms of racial relations that help give people context that are really good. One is Watchmen. Have you seen that on HBO?
No, I'm not. You said
It's
Watchmen?
Watchmen. Yeah, I mean, it's a very much like kind of superhero show, but the very opening scene is in this massacre that happened in Oklahoma in, I think it was 1921. And then the other one is Lovecraft Country, which is also an HBO. But there's a lot of scenes there, even though it's a fictional show, about some of the things that were happening between, for example, police and Black people, and why there is this tension. And obviously there's a historical context for these things, but I think so many people don't understand why there's so much fear and anger and frustration. And if you, at least as for myself as a white person, like I personally have never been impacted in that way, nor has my family, but I think we all have a duty to understand the trauma and what's happened, so that we can understand how deep it goes. Like this, I feel like a lot of people want to just dismiss some of these things and like, can't we just move on? And it's like, this is like a deep wound that needs to be healed, and we can't move on until we really understand it.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking 400 plus years from slavery to Jim Crow. I mean, it's just, people are just not going to get over it like it didn't happen,
No.
So it's the understanding, to your point, like you said, other people, Black folks, what they went through, and, even in different communities, here in the United States, we're not all monolithic. You've got, for example, in the Northeast, right? So you've got your Haitians, your Jamaicans, you got your Caribbean folks. Now, the shocker for me was when I came out here to Sacramento, it's just like everybody's just Black. It's like, oh, what the, where my Haitian people at? Where my Jamaican people at? Where my Trinis? Oh, okay, all right. So, what I'm saying? And understanding that there's even different cultures within, Haitian community, within the Haitian community. And, there's just all of those things, and understanding those things, and, not just treating one group as one monolithic group. It's understanding that there's cultures and subcultures and all of those things. And that's what makes us unique and makes us different. And I think that's what also makes us great. We all have something to contribute. And, when you have that understanding, and when you have that, again, like I was saying, that love, respect, and understanding of other people, and you get to see them for who they are in here, as opposed to what you see outside. And yeah, we all see different colors of people and genders. Anybody who says, oh, I don't see race, really? I mean, You must be blind. Yeah, you blind. Seriously, we all see race. But it's but it's how do you treat people, and that's the most important thing. So I'm using my platform just like other people, using their platforms, for good and greater good, and we're going to do the best that we can in the positions that we have.
I love that. And I think a lot of what's happening right now is really this kind of collective need to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
Like as groups of people, individuals, we all just need to be heard, and we need individuals and society to say, it's okay, I hear you, I hear your pain, I hear what's happened, I'm not judging you, I'm just listening. And right now, unfortunately, what's happening a lot of time is like someone expressing their pain, and then someone's like, no, that's wrong. It's like, no. And then all that does is escalate everything. So I think the work that you're doing is so important. Thank you so much. I'd love to just see, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today?
Yeah, actually, to the last point you just made. So after we did our walk, we came up with 3 main points, or 3 talking points. I see you, I hear you, and I'm accountable to you. Mm-hmm. And when we say I see you, it is I see you for who you are as a person, not your economic situation, not your background, nothing. We just see you as a human, the individual. I hear you in the sense of there's a lot of frustrations and there's a lot of trauma out there, and nobody's listening to those who are hurt. And we've heard the expression more than once that, riots are the language of the unheard. And we hear people when they say that they're tired of what's going on and they want to see change. And I'm accountable to you. And the point that we made with that is, as a leader in law enforcement, as a leader and somebody who's big on evidence-based policing and saying that, reforms are done properly and not, with a knee-jerk reaction, we're going to use our platform. I'm going to use my platform for good, for everybody. So we have a just system that works for everybody. So I just wanted to make sure I put that in there and let you know about that.
Thank you. This has been amazing. So Dr. Obed, if people want to learn more or connect with you and what you're doing, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yep. So you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dr. Obed Magny. So that's DrObedMagny. You can go to my website, magnyleadership.com. You can contact me there. Just not that difficult to find. You can email me at obed@magnyleadership.com. And yeah, that's
great. And so if there are police officers, for example, listening who would like to explore this or help create this approach in their department, do you have an avenue for them to do that? Or how can people get more involved in this approach specifically for policing?
Yeah, so you just send me an email, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm also on LinkedIn, and just let me know that you're interested, and then we can go from there. Because training can be done virtually. Obviously, we're in this pandemic, so I'm a big fan of in-person type trainings, but circumstances.
You do what you have to do.
do, and if what's unique or what's different about this training is it's not your typical. You show up for one day, get your 8-hour training, and then you get a certificate, and then you walk away. Okay, I'm emotionally intelligent. There's got to be some coaching involved. There will be coaching involved to ensure that you are improving, or you're getting better, or to see where you're at if you're making progress. Because if you're not measuring, then it's not important to you. And measuring is very, very important if we're going to see success in anything going on in the reform age of policing.
I love this. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Obed, for talking with us today.
No problem. Thank you. Have a great day.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. If you'd like more information about me, you can go to my website, healingpowers.net, on the mind, body, spirit side, and powershour.biz on the business and marketing side. Thanks for listening and for your support.